المصطفى محمد وعليه الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم الكتاب المجيد: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإن من شيء إلا عندنا خزائن وما ننزله إلا بقدر المعلوم. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Last week we pointed out to, and also the riwayat and hadith that the author have brought discusses the importance and the significance of the Quran in the hadith. You know how important Quran is and how Quran will appear on the Day of Judgment in a pure form. Even the Shuhada, even the Muslimin, even the prophets, they all will be surprised to look at such a beautiful appearance of a being, and they will all say that this person is higher than us, higher than us, and higher than us. And eventually it ends up recognizing or being recognized as the Quran. As there's other riwayat or narrations which points out to that the Quran will be bikr, meaning that it will be like a virgin when it comes on the Day of Judgment, that nobody have really understood what is the in-depth reality of the Quran. Then we also pointed out to the levels of the hereafter. The riwayat indicates is based on the Quran. Iqra wa warqa. The more a person recites. Now this recitation of the Quran means that how much this Quran have become flesh and blood for me. How much of my life is Quran based. How much of my actions are Quran based. Now there are two things here. One is that I might be living in accordance to the Quran in the sense that when Quran says aqimus salat, well, I'm performing it. But the point is that if I'm familiar with the Quran, if I read Quran daily, when I'm performing that act, that verse will strike in my mind. That verse, I will remember it. It kind of, it becomes very lively. The whole Quran becomes lively. Every action that I'm performing, it kind of bounces back. It reminds me of those verses. If I continuously recite Quran every day, it will really help me. I will start seeing Quran everywhere. It's like, for example, if you recite Dua Nutba like every Friday, and then those, Dua is obviously compared to Quran, it's a short dua. Quran is a huge sort of bigger book, and it takes a longer of a time for us to really have a comprehensive understanding on the outward sense of the Quran. Like dua, dua is very small, nutba, and then whenever, if you are a regular reciter, those verses reflects in your mind. When you remember the 12th Imam, when you miss him, you will miss him according to that verse of Dua Nutba. It's Majalis, for example, you say, Aina talib bidamil maqtul wa Karbala. That will come to your mind, for example. So you miss according to the framework that has been provided by the Aimma and Masumin, and that missing, that sort of reminder, it's a different one. It's more divine. So the same way, Iqra wa warqa, yes, recite and go higher. If our life is 100% like the Quran, then therefore, automatically these verses of the Quran will reflect, in every action of ours. Maybe we are traveling with a siru fil ard, for example. Fanzur kayfa kana aqibatul, mukaddibin, or whatever that verse is. Mushrikeen, for example. Maybe you go to some, Athens or somewhere, and then these verses kind of reflect. So the point is that we have to really bring Quran to our life. Everyday recital is a must. We claim, Fatima Zahra Salamullah alayha, she says that Ali recite Quran after you bury me. That's her wasiyah. So this really shows that how important Quran should be for us. 8th Imam says he's not my Shia if he does not recite 50 verses every day. So we have to recite at least 50 verses every day. Yes, I understand the translation and the meaning and the understanding. Yeah, that could be hand in hand. At least if we recite 50 verses, maybe 2 verses we could see the translation of it because of the time, because of the preoccupation that we are. It's quite important that Quran becomes, our daily routine. Now, somebody asked Maulana, we recite Quran in our prayer, Surah Ham, Surah Qadr, does that count 50 verses as well? No. That is separate. That is separate. The sabbahat, the 5 sabbahat that we recite at night, which is sunnah of the Prophet, emphasize so much. Every night before a mu'min, if somebody who wants to purify oneself, must recite these 5 sabbahat. Surah Hadid, Surah Hashr, Surah Saf, Surah Juma, Surah Taghabun. Right. It's a must for the spiritual wayfarer. Allama Tabatabai, Sayyid Ali Qazi, Imam, all of those who got onto this path of spiritual wayfaring, it is a must, these sabbahat. Now, even this sabbahat is other than those 50 verses. Right? So, therefore, we have to really basically pile up our act, be serious about, recitation of Quran, and make it a point that we recite every day, no matter what, we recite every day. Now, first chapter talks about the significance of the Quran. There are riwayat and hadiths which we have gone through. A bit of more explanation we have done to emphasize it. Now, the second chapter looks into the status of the Quran from the Quran itself. What is the maqam? What is the manzilat? What is the station? What is the status of the Quran from the Quranic point of view itself? Because this is a very unique methodology of Allama Tabatabai, which the author have adapted here in this chapter, which is, explaining the Quran through Quran itself. Because God have sent the Quran. Who will be the best, teacher of the Quran? It will be God Himself. So let's look at how Quran is introducing itself. How God Himself, how Quran is introducing itself. That will be the best introduction. If somebody else is introducing, I might not know the person. I will introduce him, okay, this person is a, PhD, is a Hawzawi, he's studied there, born here. But there are many aspects that I may not know. But so the Quran is status of the Quran from the Quranic point of view itself. How Quran is introducing. That's the second chapter that looks at it. So now, obviously, as a premise, we have to look at the approach. One is that this whole worldly affair, or this universe, or this stars and the moon that we have, these heavenly bodies, this dunya, is a very fraction compared to that spiritual world. Is beyond. Our physical world is really, a fraction compared to that physical. It's the lowest. That's why it's known as dunya. It's the lowest. Matter is the lowest. Just like, for example, when it comes to the mind, imagination. I say a horse. All of a sudden we could imagine. We have that capacity. This is the lowest reality of the spiritual world. Right? And even it is so lowest that it is because of this physical understanding, I have the power of imagination of what horse is. Right? But there is some sort of reality which is immaterial, which is called imagination. Does it exist or does not exist? It does exist. So there's something there. There's something there that we need to indulge and engage a bit more. Now, obviously, if this imagination is the lowest, or dream is the lowest, for example, seeing dreams, and even dreams also, comes from the physical sort of, implications of the physical realm to our mind, and then we kind of see certain things, and then sometimes we kind of jump into the real sort of spiritual realm, and that's why the interpretation and all that is required. Anyway, so what the author is trying to say here It's trying to point out to that there is physical universe and there is a spiritual universe. Physical universe is what we see. But at the same time, there is a universe which is mujarrad, which is immaterial, right? Imagination is immaterial, isn't it? Right? Which is the lowest. Now, as you go higher, when you go higher, for example, all of the spiritual blessing that we have, rizq, ilm, life, hayat, marifa, all of these things are immaterial realities that is dwelling somewhere. And that reflects on me, and I say, I understand. It was somewhere there, right? And then how did I connect to it? It's like light. As soon as that light sort of, connects, kind of opens up that sort of marifa on me, I understand that unlocks. I understand something. And I've been taught the same thing many a times and it never happened. But all of a sudden I see the same thing in a very different way. Where does this really come from? What happened? That knowledge, how did it transfer? Right? It became so different. I go to the shore every time, right? In the beach, for example, I see the waves coming. And all of a sudden, it clicks that, look, every wave is different to each other. How beautiful. God is emanating, God is creating, and every creation of His all the time is different. All of a sudden things connect. From this physical you went to the spiritual world altogether, that manaviyat altogether, right? So, as God says that in the Quran, وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا إِنْدَنَا خَزَائِن. Near God there are some khazayan, treasures. And from these treasures, وَمَا نُنَزِّلُهُ إِلَّا بِقَدْرِ الْمَعْلُومِ. And from these treasures, God have sent بِقَدْرِ الْمَعْلُومِ. A limited amount is here. The reality of it is in there. If you want to philosophize it a bit, the archetypical world of Plato, it's somewhere else. It's the shadows here, right? So what we have is بِقَدْرِ مَعْلُومِ is very little. It hasn't really, arrived. It's not here. It's in the khazain. It's over there. From there, بِقَدْرِ مَعْلُومِ have been sent. Imagine that. In the Adab Salat of Imam Khomeini, he discusses, for example, there are angels who are in ruku before the khilqat of Adam thousands of years. Who are just in ruku, still now they are in ruku, and they don't even know that Adam was created and Qiyamah happened, and that they will be still in ruku. Some are in sajda, they don't even know that Qiyamah have happened and what happened in the dunya, for example. They will be still in ruku, for instance. So, in terms of that khazain, in terms of that reality, very little have been sent to us. We are unable to really comprehend this. And even after this ni'mat, is given and provided, he's so, unthankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right. Now, Inna kulla shay'in khalaqna biqadarin. Very limited amount. As God says that indeed we have created everything in a measure. There's a little capacity of man that he could reach, that he could understand. Beyond that, in this world he will not be able to. He has to really transfer. He has to enter that spiritual world. It's like a child. The child have a limited understanding. You understand and you want to transfer that, it doesn't have the capacity. It's a limited understanding. The time will gradually come. He will expand. He will understand, right? But even once he reaches to that maximum capacity, still it will stop there. He has to enter a different realm altogether. That's why you have barzakh, that's why you have sirat, that's why you have hisab, that's why. All are these different realms and realities of God for our expansion, right? Like sustenance, as he discusses. Rizq comes from Allah. Sometimes the Quran refers to the fact that in the case of Hazrat Maryam, her rizq came from Allah. Hazrat Zakaria and rizq. Now, there's a relationship of this physical world with the immaterial reality. This is a subject in itself. For example, we say in Jannah there is anar, there is pomegranate. Why pomegranate? Why not mangoes? Although Jannah is a place of whatever you want, it is there. But why is it? Because of, anar was a fruit amongst the Arabs, was known as something good, or no, there is something beyond to it. Talks about milk. Is it because of, talks about water and streams, is it because of the Arabs and the dry weather, or it is something beyond? That's something that we need to really, discuss and come to some understanding of it. Some would say, oh, because it's the Arabia, it's because of that time, and its influence, because they wanted them to attract these Arabs who were Jahil, so they should do some good work, so they will believe in the hereafter, and that's why God is talking about that. This is a bit primary, It's in the similar way how we say that, the Qur'anic laws are, outdated. We cannot have Qur'anic laws now. It's for that period because man have developed and progress, his aql have become now. You don't need Qur'an as such. It has this sort of texture to it, this sort of understanding. No, but the Qur'an is eternal. The laws of the Qur'an are eternal. And the implementation of these laws is not, for the physical harmony, for the physical equilibrium or justice as such, but it has the spiritual aspect, as we discussed earlier about hijab, for example. Hijab is not hijab just because that there be no corruption in the society or in the community, but hijab is a hijab because it's essential to the feminine nature, which is the reflection of the Jamal, should consciously cover, because Jamal of God is hidden. So when female are reflecting the Jamal and the beauty of God, so they should participate in consciously acting on covering themselves, because Jamal is hidden. Right? So the laws the same way, and also the physical explanation, there will be figs, for example, anjir, fig in the hereafter. Wattine was zaytun. So there is something about these fruits which is spiritual about it, not because of the makan. Arabic. Why Quran is in Arabic? Because it came in Arabia? No. Arabic had the capacity to contain the word of God. That is why it is in Arabic. God wanted to send His message, His final message. Now from spirituality, it has to come to the physical one. From this teapot, it has to come into my cup. The cup must have that ability and capacity to really take that tea. Not because, it is the cup, it happened to be here. No. So the same way, everything that Quran talks about have a very symbolic value, and there is some in-depth connection with that physical reality to that spiritual reality. If you look at the value of these things, I don't want to go in margin and tangents and discuss these things. Everything is based on its value, how much that is consumed by humanity. Right? And that value increases. The value of insan is how much he is able to provide to other human beings. The value of insan is that perfect man is that who gives. Rasulullah, he gave the maximum capacity as an insan that he could give to humanity, and that is the Quran. So the same way, dates. The value of dates is because it provides everything to insaniyat, to the maximum capacity. Plus, on the other hand, you have the asar of it on the soul. So what I'm trying to say is that you have that physical reality of things. This physicalness, there is some relationship with the spiritual reality. Now, as there is a relationship of this physical thing, which is a date, or which is a halal food, or which is a camel meat, or whatever, as this have some,
some higher reality. Now, when I eat that, it will have an effect on me in terms of my soul. For example, if you eat the food that birds eat, your soul will be very light. That's how the Hindus, they tend to practice their spirituality. They have food which the birds only eat. They don't eat meat, for example, because they want their soul to be light so that they can enter into higher realms, higher realities, so on and so forth, with spiritual exercises. Because this physical thing have an effect on me. Bird, they eat this. When they eat this, they are able to fly. So if I eat this, I will have the ability to fly. You see, I will be light. So food have an effect. So what I'm trying to say is that this physical world that we have, there's a relationship of this physical world to that spiritual world, right? Like rizq, which comes to Hazrat Maryam, is a rizq. It is clearly seen, it's like anar and pomegranate in her mihrab, and Hazrat Zakaria was like, what is this? Where does it come from? It is from God. So it is not just a symbolic or spiritual meaning that rizq is there. Yes, rizq has a spiritual value. People can have a lot of rizq, eat and eat, never get, their bellies are not filled. They are just keep on eating. There were people in history that we talk about, who used to eat a lot. There's a lot of rizq there, but they are never filled. But at the same time, you have some people who eat just little. They are satisfied, happy, thankful, right? That's a rizq. So there is a spiritual reality of rizq, but at the same time, not to forget that there is physical value of that commodity or whatever that thing may be. It will have a spiritual effect on our soul as well. So I kind of pointed out to two things here. One, rizq, yes, as the author is talking about rizq from that spiritual point of view. But I am saying at the same time, extending to the discussion that is there, that is that Prophet liked milk. When he went on Mi'raj, Prophet was offered 3 drinks. He was given water, he was given sharab, tahura, wine, pure wine obviously, and then milk. So Prophet took milk. Now they said that, oh Prophet, what a good choice. If you have taken water, your ummah would have become like Yahud. Very law-oriented. If you have taken wine, your ummah would have become like Christians, purely spiritual. But you have taken milk, which have the element of water and also the sweetness as well, to balance it. So there is some value to it as well. That's why drinking milk is sunnah. But now today doctors, they say milk is no good because what they have done with milk, unfortunately, it's all lacto-free and all the issues is with the milk these days, That's why we have almond milk, coconut milk and whatnot. Anyways, so milk have some value to it as well. That's why it has some element of sunnah. And then, having said that and accepting that, at the same time, there is a spiritual universe which talks about sustenance, which talks about rizq, which talks about knowledge. For example, knowledge also comes from Allah. And all of these things which have spiritual reality, they all come from Allah. For example, قَالَ إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنْ إِلْمَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. And God is the one who is giving that ilm. So you have that physical rizq, which also comes from God, right? But they may grow on tree and plant and we provide that. But there is another thing which is much deeper, such as rizq, such as ilm, where God directly says that I am the provider of that ilm. I am the provider of that rizq. We could, give somebody a job and we never say that I'm giving you rizq. We facilitated the job, but God is the one who is giving the rizq, right? Yes, we could facilitate, we could, that's what Imam also says that, write and exam and read and all that, but the true ilm is really that comes from God. Al-ilmu nurun. يَغْزِفُ فِي قَلْبِ مَن يَشَاءُ. Knowledge is like light. And God places this knowledge in the heart of whosoever God desires and wishes. And God doesn't desire without wisdom and hikmah. God will not all of a sudden put this, the one who is not trying hard to really educate oneself. That passion needs to be there. Then God also says labbaik. Then God also answers. So we have to try it from our side, and then God installs that as well. Like for example, another type of is sawab. Whoever desires the reward of this world should know that with Allah is the reward of this world and the hereafter. And Allah is all hearing and all seeing. Reward is also one type of risk, one type of sort of reality, that is in that universe. Right. Now, God talks about the risk of shuhada. What type of risk they are having? They are alive. God says they are alive. What type of life is that? We don't see them, but they are alive. People who die, for example, God is not saying, God is saying they died. But for shuhada, they are saying they are alive. What type of life is that? In terms of the outwardness, shaheed is not here. The person who died, he's not here as well. He's not in this thing. But shaheed is alive. That's what God is saying. What type of life is that? And God says, we are giving them a risk. We are providing them a risk continuously, which makes them, live. Risk is sustenance. For a person to live, risk is needed, right? Now, then the author gets into the relationship of, between this world and the alam India, which is the alam India, which means that of the risk and that spiritual universe. What is the relationship between these two and how things are connected? Because we are in mulk, as we discussed earlier. This is called mulk. This is defined as mulk. In the Islamic terminology, they call it mulk. Mulk is like the earth, world, for example. Then you have the malakut, which is the angelic realm, that they usually talk about. Malakut, and that alam of malakut, or alam of khalq, or alam of amr. Ru min amri rabbi, for example, as it's from that alam, it's from that amr. The other orafa, they also tend to divide into, mulk, malakut, and jabarut, which is the jabarut means the alam of the names of God. There's the names of God first, then you have mulk, then you have malakut, and mulk. Now here, for Quran, which is the word of God, it comes from that jabarut. Then it comes to malakut, Jibrail, that angel, and then it comes to mulk, to the Prophet. So there's a relationship, with that spiritual universe to this dunya. And the angels, they are responsible of carrying out these tasks for God. Rizq is God who provides. Malakul Maut, death of a person, is the angel who tends to do that. Now, sometimes, we tend to think that angel is doing all of these things because we imagine that doing means that, picking here, doing there, then. But sometimes it's just that presence of an angel. It is us who are moving. As they say, the Quran, for us to understand, says that the angel of death will come and it takes the spirit away. We take the spirit away, for example. But it is actually me who is sleeping. It is actually me who is dying. Because there is only one existence, and that is the same existence of Jabarut, Malakut, and Mulk. That's one. Everything is nothing but the existence of the divine, isn't it so? And its different manifestations and its different forms that we see. So the fourth Imam says, in regards to death, for example, as the فَالْمُدَبِّرَاتِ أَمْرًا, as the Quran says, death is a mukashifa, which means unveiling of the truth, of angel of death. The angel of death is right here. Alhamdulillah, we don't see it. If we see, we die. Because it's not like, oh, he's coming from somewhere and he come here. No, it's right here. Quran is the same Quran which is here, is in the Lawh Mahfuz. There is no difference in that. This is a different Quran to Lawh Mahfuz. No, it's the same Quran. It's not like physicality as such. Something was on the first floor, then it came to the second floor. So it is no longer in the first floor because it came down. If it was on the second floor, then it came down to the first floor. So it's no longer on the first floor. Right? So therefore, Quran, when we say Quran, it is that very Quran which is in Lawh Mahfuz. It is hay, it is alive. It is connected. That's why it's called Hablullahil Mateen. It's a habl, it's like a rope that we cling onto and then we go. The other side is over there, the spiritual side is there, and the physical is here. That's why we are not supposed to touch the verses of the Quran without wudu, because it's pure. Right? It has that spiritual element to it. Right? So therefore, many a times we tend to think that, okay, this angel's doing things, that he's bringing risk or he's coming here. No, it is just that unveiling of the reality and truth to me. I am sleeping, my soul is leaving the body. The angel is death is the same way as the Imam says, that he is here, not coming from anywhere, because everything is connected. It's all connected. This alam to the malakut and malakut to jabarut. Yeah. Right. Now, I don't know, we have time, or are we okay for how much time we got?
We have another 4-5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yes. Now, the author tries to explain that, yeah. If you help me with the salawat ala Muhammad wa Right. Now, the author tries to explain how this connection of this world and the hereafter takes place. What makes this connection happen? And he points out to some of the things that could be transferred from this world to that world, because it's two worlds, which in order that we take some examples practically, and then at the same time from that world to this world, So very briefly, I will just mention what is he really trying to say, in the sense that the connection from this world to that world is that, you may open a charity, or, to give food. But if the niyat is not there, that will not connect to the hereafter. You have to have the niyat, that qurb, that charity for the sake of God, so that you achieve that reward in the hereafter. Right? This niyat is the key point, where that this world connects to that world. Right? And because we are going to go in that world, in the hereafter, as God talks about hereafter, then we will be able to see the fruit and reward of this in the hereafter, if that niyat is there. Right? Now, he says that basically, it is very much required of us that we invest in protecting our hereafter. And when we invest in the hereafter, that is that our actions, our charity will remain with God, and we will be able to see that. Kullu shay'in halik illa wajhu. Everything will perish except the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ma indakum yanfud wa ma indallah baq. Whatever is in our hand, it will vanish, but what is with Allah, it will remain. So you have the niyat and you have the marifa. Marifat is also very important, knowledge also very important, that need to be there. And based on these two things, we'll be able to really we'll be able to really achieve that is in the hereafter. Now, I kind of quickly jumped into what I was talking about, the connection of the hereafter, of that world and this world, is in regards to the Quran. So, my apologies that I briefly went through about the hereafter and sawab and all that. I'm more focused upon the Quran, and then how this transformation of Quran have taken place from the heaven to this world, right? Now, as we were discussing earlier, that something from the ghaib, something from that universe, such as rizq, such as knowledge, have to come down to this world. And this world is very limited. It does not have the capacity. And we are talking about the word of God. We are talking about Quran coming here. That's why it says, it gives an example. A mu'min is like a mountain. Mu'min is like a mountain, because he has the ability to take the Quran. And God says that if I reveal this Quran on the mountain, it will shatter into pieces, right? So this mu'min have that ability to really bring down that message of God, to really contain that, to have that, right? And obviously, when it comes to the grades of the mu'min, you have the Prophet. Even, alam nashra laka sadrak, God expanded the heart of the Prophet. It was the Prophet who was able to really bear that. Where the Quran is saying that if it comes on the mountain, it will shatter into dust. Right? And it was the heart of the Prophet. It was the Prophet who really managed. And that's why, you look at many verses of the Quran where it points out to that, that this is something very thaqeel, something that is very heavy, what has been given to you. So all of these things that we talk about, Tawheed, Imamat, Wilayat, Quran, Amal, hereafter, Qiyamah, these are very heavy duty stuff. It's not for everybody as such. The mind and heart must have that capacity to take it. And we have to work towards it. That's why Imam says, there's a hadith in the first lesson, you would say that a mu'min should not leave this dunya unless or until he has understood the Quran. He should have a complete understanding of the Quran. Yes, we are unable to understand, but Imam it's like, for example, Amirul Mu'min says, Tawheed is what? Tawheed is to negate all the sifat, to get rid of all attributes of God. So shall we not say God is Rahman, He's not Rahim, He's not Ghafoor? No, He is that. But the true Tawheed is that. So Imam is saying that a mu'min should leave this dunya where he should have understanding, complete understanding of the Quran, in the sense that whatever is required and the mu'min have the capacity to understand. Obviously he will not be able to understand the in-depth reality of it, right? So therefore, I think we'll stop here, and then we'll try to continue and basically try to bring in what the author have talked about, the hereafter and reward, and amend, sort of do the damage control, because I kind of skipped to the more spiritual aspect of the Quran and the nuzul of the Quran a bit earlier, inshallah. But I think, I hope and pray that, we had a relatively okay session, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi tahirin. Any questions, please, brother? Yes.
That If all the religions are the same, and there is only one religion that was revealed over time, then why weren't all the books in Arabic?
Yes.
That was the main language that continues.
Yeah. Because of the need of mankind. You know, in every era, there was a specific need for a group of community, for a group of people, and they lived in that sort of vicinity or neighborhood, which had the whatchamacall, the, it's not me, right? No. Which had the influences of that time zone, you know, of that, you know, frame of that place. Because of that, the prophets were sent to different, you know, lands and different places. Now, I see what you're trying to say is that why there is no uniformity in terms of the message of God. Wherever the message of God should have been sent, it should have been in Arabic. You know, if Arabic is the most complete language to really contain that. Now, if for that era, you know, for the message of God to be eternal, it needed the most powerful language. For the previous eras, limited editions were sufficient enough for the people, you know, living in different places, which will make them reach their human capacity to become a good human being. But as Quran is an eternal book, you know, and it's for every time, for, you know, from the time of the Prophet till the Day of Judgment, it required a more powerful and more profound tool to be utilized, which was Arabic. You know, we revealed it in Arabic. Now, it's not just because of this reason. There are many factors to it. The act of God have many different, you know, realities to it. The humanity in Arabia have reached is, you know, that point, last point, where they are burying human alive. You know, that's how it has gone down. So it required that God do something about it. So this was happening at the same time. And now this also shows the miracle of the Quran and of Islam, that a society that was dead becomes, you know, the most perfect of the perfect in terms of, you know, in terms of its teaching. Yes, the Arabs, they still might be jahil and they're doing what they are doing, but amongst these people there was Salman. Among these people there was Imam Hussein. They were all human beings, and that is because of the message of Quran. So it's like you have this is one of the signs of God, that you have, like, you know, minus 50 outside, it's cold, but inside you go, you have, you know, warm sort of, you know, water there, you know, like, yes, usually you have these natural springs. It's really hot inside, but outside is really free. So the same way, God, it's not just that, okay, now God have to send this in Arabic, now he kind of, you know, uses just because of that. But there are many factors involved there. Yeah. You're welcome. Yes.
May I give a comment?
Bismillah. Yes, sure.
I think this question was a very strong question. I had
Yes.
the same thing in my thought. And I want to share a...
Yes,
now,
please. Yeah.
I think our Ustad will agree that when you are in Hosea, when you study Arabic, anyone has done computer programming, for example, or loves mathematics. You've got the rules which are very precise, and they are algorithms. When you do Arabic, it is so daqiq, so precise, that someone who reverts to Islam, and they see that they can be attracted by the language itself. And once it's like an attraction there, they think and they walk and talk only Arabic. And that's something, if someone has not been introduced to that, and they suddenly see that language in itself and the rules which they take it from the Quran. Till today, people quarrel between the Basri and the Najaf is cool, but they still go back that how could Quran exactly give me this inspiration? That's
Yeah.
another dimension.
Yes, indeed.
And I would
Yeah.
even say that other people from Ahlul Kitab, especially from the country of Lebanon, for example,
Mhm.
where you have Christians so forth, they themselves are Christian. They say don't play with the Quran because that one defines how our language and style is, even though they're not Muslims. I just wanted to add that.
Yes, thank you. No, interesting. Yeah, indeed. It's fascinating. Yes, Will.
You quoted two verses, and I'd just like to explore that a little bit with you. First, you said was about the ruh. So it says, "Yas'alunaka 'anil ruh." The ruh min amri
And
rabbi.
Rabbi, yes.
And the next part of the verse says, وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنْ عِلْمٍ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا.
Yeah.
So the key factor here is not just that the ruh is amri rabbi, but that we have been given very little ilm. So the key is the ilm,
Yes.
or maybe the intellect.
Yeah.
And then the other verse you said was, لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل رأيته متذللا من خشية الله. So is this a metaphor that because it's an inanimate object and it does not have the capacity for ilm, that it cannot handle the Quran? Or is it that even amongst the people who are not under ilm will never be able to handle the reality of the Quran?
And the first one is yes, the capacity for man to understand is very little. That's why God clearly says that, as we were talking about, there's only limited capacity for that we could take, in this world. Perhaps we may understand what ruh is better in barzakh, and maybe more better in the hereafter, because our capacity increases. As they say that the ruh will be standing in ranks, saffan saffa, on the day of judgment, the ruh will also come, right? So yes, if I have understood your comment right, that's what I would emphasize is, that's correct, yes. That we do not have the capacity to clearly understand what ruh is to its maximum capacity while being in this dunya. We've been given very little. In relation to the mountain, and if the Quran was revealed onto a mountain, that's a metaphor that mountain is this huge, humongous, sort of strong and heavy, grounded. But still, if the Quran was revealed onto it, in that spiritual sense, that physicality will burst, it will not take it. But man, because he has some relationship with his spirit, there's some commonality with that world, he's able to comprehend that. And it doesn't really make him sort of turn into dust, for instance. It's that physical metaphor. And now, having said that, then the heart of a mu'min and the heart of a person who is not, who is a kafir, for example, who yes, he has the capacity because he is insan. وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي and all that. He has that capability and capacity. But he has stopped, he has covered, he has done kufr from taking that. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yes.
So just a continuation to what you were saying about لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته. Isn't this verse related to فجعله دكا وخر موسى صعقا?
Yes.
Because this is about nuzul, and the light of the Quran is equal to what the light that Musa saw al Tur.
Yeah.
And these are not these two verses associated.
Yes, it's about nuzul of the Quran and nuzul of
the Prophet.
Yes, yeah.
So would we be correct to say that لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله?
Yeah.
It is to do with the light of the Quran, the nuzul on the light of the Quran on the
Heart of the Prophet, yes.
If it had come on any other heart, that heart would not have been able to withstand it, because the same way Musa saw فجعله دكا وخر موسى صعقا. Would that be not?
Right. So what you're saying is that what the brother is trying to point out is that this verse is particularly to the Prophet, not to any other. Yeah. No other heart have the capacity to take the Quran. So if the Quran was revealed, onto the heart of the Prophet, onto the heart of anybody, it will happen that. The author discusses that, here as well, is the heart of the Prophet. However, as a mu'min, he has the capacity to really understand, to a certain degree what Quran is, But particularly if it's what the brother is saying, that is that nur, just like how what happened on the Jabal. If this Quran was revealed onto the heart of, the mountain or anybody, that would have happened, Inshallah. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Ahsantum. Thank you very much. Ahsan. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.